Are you from America?
Yep, I sure am.
How's it going over there?
Uh, I mean, it's not. It depends on where you're at, really.
Where,
You know, what I
where
mean, like the cities are kind of fucked because nobody gives a shit about anything. They
hmm.
don't take care of nothing, so it's a dump. You know what I
what
mean?
what part of you do you live in?
I'm northeast, northeast.
I'm from Australia. I don't know what that means. What's that mean?
Okay, so I'm from Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah, Pennsylvania. That's where Donald Trump got shot at. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And what was it, Scranton or something like that? Near Scranton,
Mm.
I don't remember,
Um.
but
So, how do you see Australia from in America? Because we see you guys on telly all the time and all
uh,
that. It's what's it like over there?
well, it's kind of the same everywhere, really. It's not. I mean, if you compare Australia, Europe, even South Africa, um, you know, America. I mean, you have a large growing population, which is, you know, I mean, the population has been growing pretty exponentially for the past century. I mean, you look at China and India; they're way overpopulated. So either what they're going to have to deal with is a complete, you know, systematic collapse, population collapse, or they have to spread out. Now, here's the question: does the rest of the world accept them to come in and say, "Hey, like, you know, we'll let a million, we'll let 2 million Chinese or Indians come into our country to prevent, possible, and China and India both have their issues as well as any other country, but uh, it's I don't know, man. I mean, certainly if you are having immigration, you want people that are coming in that are going to contribute.
Just in Australia, they're spitting the dummy because we're getting our immigration. They're trying to just stop it because there's not enough houses for people to live in here, and
Right.
they just did the figures that come on the news last night. There's more jobs available than what's being taken by the immigrants, which means they're letting in immigrants that are unskilled, which is costing the country more because they're not taking the jobs. And it's making people angry
Right.
because by letting in, because the country's so young, it's only 200 years old over here. Um,
Right. We're only
except,
250.
are you? Is
Yeah,
America?
America's only 250
Oh,
years old,
really?
1776.
Oh,
Right.
wow. Yeah, right. But so,
Some young nations,
you go.
and look what our ancestors have built.
Mm. Mm. So at the moment, we're getting people in the country that are, for the majority, not contributing. And what's happened is the
Right.
cost of the houses and the cost of rent is more expensive than what people are, the money that we're making now.
Right.
And the young kids, like the generation behind me, without their mums and dads, some of them are having to pay like $800 a week rent on average.
Right.
And they're not
Yeah.
making that, they're just not making that. It's not a good place at the moment, Australia.
Yeah. Well, I talk to a lot of Aussies, and I talk to a lot of Kiwis. I talk to a lot of people on here. You know what I mean? From all over the world. But you also have countries so you look at like Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has a large population of Filipinos, and they actually have, like, I think a couple million Filipinos that they've imported in from the Philippines, to take those lower wage, positions and stuff like that to fill, the labor costs. But that's the thing too, is well, you're seeing a lot of inflation. You're seeing a lot of I'd say price gouging and a lot of propaganda around that. But what you're not seeing increased wages, but you are seeing a lot of immigrants coming in, and they're coming into these programs, and some of them are taking advantage of it. They'll come here, they'll take advantage of the program, and then they might go back home, or they even send some of the money back home because I mean,
Mm.
American dollar, I mean, you could take, $25,000 to an East Asian company, Southeast Asian country like the Philippines or, Thailand or something like that. And you could live there way better, way more sustainable in those countries just with that small amount of money, as far as, I mean, but in America, it's expensive. So it's
Yeah.
but I think a lot of it's just a matter of just market manipulation, labor exploitation, uh, and not only that, but just exploitation of those that are contributing and paying taxes as well. Because that money that you're paying into taxes is being funneled into the pockets of the homeowners, the landowners, the builders that are building, the affordable living uh, establishments that the immigrants are coming into and getting subsidized. And so it's just going right, it's coming, they're taking money out of the working class group and putting it into the top tier group and kind of utilizing this immigration as a means to do so. And that's what I'm seeing as far as Australia, Europe, and America are concerned. You know what I mean?
Can I ask you, did you see that incident in Ireland where that man was helping the immigrant move into a place and the immigrant dragged him onto the street and started beheading him? Have you seen that?
Yeah. No, I haven't seen
Oh
that.
my
Where
God.
was it? Was it Dublin?
Okay, so I'll tell you what, man, Ireland's getting burnt to the ground as we speak.
Yeah.
Because some
Yep.
some some fellow that was a little bit autistic and that was helping an immigrant move into a unit, and nobody knows what's happened. All of a sudden, this big black guy, man, he drags this guy into the street. The place is going ballistic, and starts chopping his head off, and he's standing in the street like this, and nobody'd stop it. And then all of a sudden, it's on X. All of a sudden, this guy runs up with like a hockey stick, but it had like a ping pong thing on the end of it. And he's clubbing this guy, and it was like hitting an American pit bull dog. Man, these guys from Sudan and wherever are Sudanese guys, they're like
Yeah.
rocks, mate. And this poor bloke, he he carved his two eyes out, and he's still alive, but they don't think he's going to live. They're burning Ireland to the ground as we speak. I can't believe it. And I only mention
Well,
that,
and that's another
yeah,
thing too, is so they're creating this issue, but then they're gonna come up with this solution. And the solution is pretty much gonna be we're putting more moratoriums on immigration. We are going to start sweeping, these nations and dealing with some of these problem immigrants where they're not assimilating, and we're going to start repatriatizing them back home. You know what I mean? But who's going to be the one that's going to be enforcing it? The middle class, working class. You know what I mean? And then that money, they're going to say, okay, well, we need more funding funding to handle this. And then they're going to say, all right, well, let's put it into, these private corporations. Let's,
yeah, yeah,
create
yeah.
the problem, find the solution. It's all about circulating the money. And that's the thing. And unfortunately, a lot of people want to put all the blame on the immigrants, but it's,
No.
the truth of the matter is, you know, for one, there's a lot there, there should be much more stricter vetting processes as
Mm,
far as who's coming in,
mm,
you know. And then on top of that, it should also be, a matter of like, hey, we're only going to accept this many immigrants. But you look at the EU, I mean, look at Poland. Poland pays like what, like $1 million, or like they pay millions of dollars every year just to like, because they're breaking the EU immigration policy. They're part of the EU, but they pay millions of dollars in fines for not following the EU immigration policy. And
mm,
look at Poland. Poland's safe. It's
mm.
clean. You know what I mean? It's
Can I ask you a question as an American gentleman about Elon Omar and Minnesota and like what we're seeing over here? We're going to ourselves, how can these people not be in jail?
well with the fraud.
Yeah.
Well, that's yeah. I mean, so you have a lot of these lawyers too, um, that are backing them, and they know how to maneuver through the law. They know how to maneuver through the lawfare, and
Wow.
you know, so as far as accountability, it's it's really hard to come by, especially when it comes to politics. Because when we start really punishing politicians, then then they're all open for accountability, right?
Yeah. Some of your conclusions are so straight to the point. It's, yeah, thanks. From Australia, looking at Minnesota, one of our politicians got caught with a bottle of wine. This is the difference between America and Australia. He got caught with a bottle of wine that he shouldn't have had, and he was immediately dismissed, like really high up. But over there, we're watching it from here, and we're going, these people are stealing millions of dollars, and they're still. And she walks around like I, in Australia, she'd be in jail straight away. I wonder why it's
Right.
different there in America. It seems
Well, like
so
I said, I
difficult,
think
man.
I think they're building up to something. You know what I mean? They're so 20 years ago, you wouldn't have had this, uh, this resistance based propaganda, as far as
Mm,
America, Europe, and Australia is concerned. If you
mm,
did, then it would have been, slapped right on the wrist right away. Um, but so, like I said, I think they're really trying to build up towards something, and they're going to be like, "Hey, we got this grand solution. Let's put a moratorium on immigration. We gotta start, kind of, repatriating some of these people that aren't assimilating to the culture and to the lifestyle, or that are trying to enforce their religious, uh, you know, their their religious
yeah,
ambitions.
yeah, yeah.
But here's another perspective
Mm,
too. So when you talk about Islam, um, I think what they're trying to do with Islam is they're trying to westernize it and pacify it the same way that they did with Christianity. Because I mean, Christianity was, it was very strict, and it was, we had a lot of religious law that was implemented over hundreds of years,
mm,
and then all of a sudden, over a process of like maybe a century or two, it slowly started to kind of just, chill.
mm,
You know what I mean?
mm,
And I think that's what they're trying to do with, the Islam, with Islam as well, mostly within like the Middle Eastern region, not so much in like, with like Pakistan, and you talk about like Malaysia, but Malaysia is really not. I mean, the Muslims in Malaysia, I don't really think that they're really that active. You know what I mean? They're more spiritual, religious based than they are, conquering religious based. You know what I mean? Like their religion is most I still have some research to do on Asia as far as that's concerned. I haven't really gotten too far past Iran. Um, but yeah, I mean, as far as my perspective is concerned, I think they're creating the problem to, circulate the money, and then they're going to come up with a solution to circulate more money and put more money into their pockets.
wow. Because what they're asking for over here is, can you just give it a little break? And what happened was, you wouldn't have seen this. This is dead set. Our prime minister went to the big mosque in Sydney. It's about an hour
Uh,
away from here. He goes to the big mosque. This is dead set. The footage is on X as well. They go into the mosque just to solidify their votes, and the next thing, the this is dead set. The next thing, the Muslims they were going to get our prime minister. And so what
yeah,
happened was, then the Muslims inside this mosque started attacking each other and stopping it, and they had to get our prime minister out in front of all of us.
right.
And we're going, you see what? Okay, so we're not against immigrants, but you're letting in people that don't like us. They don't like
That's
us.
all right.
They just don't like us, and you can't force them. So what I'm thinking is, they're trying to help these people deculturalize, right?
Hmm.
Be it religiously or within themselves. But the way I look at it is, the American pit bull dogs, they're really
Yeah,
tough and strong. Well, you can get an American pit bull dog, right? And you can train it to be placid, But somewhere along the line, it's going to bite something because that's what it is. That's
Right.
just what it
It's
is. And that's what's
yeah.
happening with the immigrants. They're trying to assimilate, but every now and then you get one random person cracking back into their culture because it's a part of them, just like a American pit bull dog and that. It's complicated. I don't think they'll ever solve it. Do you?
It's complicated, and I don't think it's I mean, me as an American with our Constitution, our and the rights that we have here, it's the rights that our fathers had established. It's it's something that has to be maintained. It's not something that should expect that the government's gonna, I mean, governments are by nature tyrannical, which is why the American Constitution was built the way it was, because it limits the government,
100%.
and by doing
Oh, that
so,
is
you
so.
know, it puts the power into the hands of the people. But that's the thing, is that the people have to understand that they have to maintain those rights, and that when the time comes, that they have to enforce those rights, and say, hey, this is the bottom line, this is how it is, the government works for us, we don't work for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just,
Can I?
so it is
Yeah.
complicated. It's extremely complicated. It's extremely complex. And you want to be compassionate. You want to be. You want to. I mean, you're walking down the street and you see somebody fall. You're gonna go to help them up, right? Right. Right. And that's just that's our nature. That's our culture. And I'm not going to say that's not anybody else's culture, but for my, because I've never been outside of the United States, but and I've heard other countries aren't the same. You go to like places like France or something like that, and people there are extremely rude, especially to tourists. They don't like tourists there. They try to take advantage of them. Um, so I think it's just really a matter of culture. And, it's, there's a lot of people that are really starting to get riled up about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of just like part of the conditioning phase for this, implementation of solution. They created the problem. They're conditioning people to the mindset of following through into a solution where it's,
Wow. Wow. That's brilliant, mate. Because I'll tell you something that happened to Australia, and you'll appreciate this mentioning your constitution. What's happened in Australia is our politicians have gone screw the constitution and left us standing
right.
there, and they brought this law in, and it's all gone really bad, where the ideological men that want to be women have the same rights as biological women, and all of a sudden blokes like me, but I wouldn't do it, are going into female private spaces and saying I'm a woman, and the women are taking these people to court, and they're coming out of
Right.
court with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and being told we're sorry, it's the law. And it is the law.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, we haven't got the protections of you've got. Another thing that happened to us that you'll find really interesting is the lady that started she's called the ESafety officer, right? Gillian
Yeah.
someone. She's from America. And she wasn't allowed to do it in America because you guys are protected by your constitution. So she's gone, I'm
Right.
going to go to Australia. She's on $500,000 a year. What she's done, she started this thing where under 16-year-olds in Australia are not allowed to access social media. That's how
That's
heavy
a good thing.
it is in a way. But what's happened is, on the other hand, the kids that are getting a lot of them, it's failed. A lot of them are getting around it. What's happening is the ones that use social media constructively for education and stuff know how to use it to become better people. They're leaving the
Right.
ones that are not allowed to go near it behind because they're getting
Yeah.
hamstrung from the edge. Like, you know how things have got a good and bad side. Well, what she's done,
Right. Well, I know that like
Yeah,
some sites have been banned, as far as like sites like this have been banned in Australia. I think it was OME. OME was banned in Australia. So I've been seeing a lot more Aussies here since OME got banned. And that, I think a lot of that was relating to like child sexual exploitation online, which is extremely prevalent.
100%, mate. And but this come from an American lady that come to Australia because she couldn't do this in America. And JD Vance, the man that's one of your really head men,
Vice President.
yeah, he said we're going to watch you because we know what you're doing. So anyway, something happened, and she took X to court, and X had to pay 650,000, and she's on the news going, "Look what we did," and then when she gets off the news, the reporter goes, 650,000 to X is like 1 second, and but what it's cost you taxpayers is $2.5 million, and she's gonna,
Well, that's,
yeah,
I mean, I mean, our financial system's kind of screwed anyways. It's a debt based, interest based system, and it's not meant for sustainability. It's meant for exploitation. Um, that's how that's the design structure of it, is to you know kind of keep the money and the power in the top tier, and you know have the ability to circumvent those that are beneath the financial structure. um it's but that's it's the way it's always been. I mean, me personally, I think the best thing that we could possibly do as a society, as a majority, would be to move towards a contributionary system where, say, you know we have this amount of resource that we can expend, outside of America. We can put out these exports and say, hey, we've got this much lumber, or, we have this much, whatever resource for like concrete, anything like that. You know what I mean? Because for one, a contributionary source, you're going to be based mainly on demand, um, which would, I mean, there's obviously going to be no profit involved because it's all contributionary, and it's not, there's no money involved in the system. It's just a management of resource, not a management of, the intermediary of resource where you have money involved in it. You know what I mean? So, Australia, I know you guys are producing like what, like 210 tons of gold every year. I think that's about where we're at right now. I think China produced 310 tons. America was around 190 tons. So as far as the production value of a country, and the availability of resource, I think we can mitigate a lot of the waste. We had the issue of the auto industry. We had to buy out auto industry, like fucking 20, about 10 years ago or so. And then we had the housing bubble back in 2008 that burst because they were building too many houses. And then the market crashed because, it's people couldn't pay, and, matter of inflation and so on and so forth. So I think the interest based financial system that we have is extremely faulty. And I really, try to encourage people to, when I do talk to people about stuff like this, I try and put into their mind, like, we could mitigate so much waste. We could mitigate, a lot of, even just social issues. And for one, we would be able to decrease our military, because nobody would be fighting over resources, because we would be sharing resources instead of trying to control them, redistribute them, and, this, so on and so forth. Um, it's an extremely complex system that we have to deal with, and I mean, we're going to get there eventually. And sometimes conflict, it arises, which always brings to resolution. When you have major conflict, you're going to have resolution that comes not too far after. And that's mostly related to sustainability and quality of life. But but yeah, it's really complex. And but a lot of people, they're so stuck into it. They've got their mortgages, they've got their car payments, and all that, so on and so forth. You know, it's really complex, but yeah, I mean, we'll get there eventually.
What's your closing statements for us people in Australia looking at it from America?
I'd say probably, try and collectivize more, show your power and strength in numbers. That's where it's at. You know what I mean? Because the ones that have, they're few. The ones that need, they're many. There's a lot of people that need, and as far as sustainability and quality of life is concerned, that's creating a social standard is really where we need to start looking at, is creating, maintaining a standard is really important. Balancing that needs to be done. And but when it comes down to it, America, we've got more guns than we have people. So nobody's gonna fuck with us here. I mean, we aren't worried about that. But when it comes to the government has an exponential amount of resource that they have at their disposal to try and manipulate, to try and mitigate any kind of dissidents or anything like that. And so that's why they work so hard to try and mitigate things, and do the things that they do sometimes, is because they're afraid. You know what I mean? When you're in those positions and you're taking advantage of people, you've got a lot to lose, because I mean, look at China. I think it was about 2 years ago, Chinese CEO, she was embezzling a bunch of money, and they charged her with fraud and embezzlement and all this stuff, and they convicted her and sentenced her to death.